Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Happy Sunday to all of you. Isn't this a beautiful day? I hope that you're doing something fun. If you're home or you're away and you're still watching us, thank you very much. It means a lot to us. So today we're going to continue our discussion on the commandments. And believe it or not, we're up to the 9th commandment. The 9th commandment is, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or thy neighbor's husband. It goes both and, not either or. So it's, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or husband. And covet, what is that word covet? It's C-O-V-E-T. It's a strong desire. Not just, but a strong desire, a covet. It's a very, you can even hear in that word covet that you want it. You have a strong desire to take it. And that you have to be very careful with, because, when you're dealing with someone's spouse, you have to respect that they are married. And that's a bond that God has blessed and solidified for them in their covenant of marriage. Because marriage is a covenant between persons. We have a covenant with God in baptism. Today at Mass, I talked about our identity. It's the identity with God that is prime importance for all of us. Yeah, we come from our families, like my mom and dad, Lou and Angie. I come from a family with my brother and my sister, a particular neighborhood, my political party, my friends, my schooling. That all shapes who I am. But my prime important identity is from God. God carved me into his own mind and thought and wanted me to exist by my mom and dad and in a particular time and place. Isn't that amazing? So our identity is rooted in Christ, rooted in God. And how is that solidified? Baptism. And it's confirmed in confirmation, and it's nourished by the Eucharist. So, the covenant of marriage. The covenant of marriage is a bond in which two people promise until death to remain faithful to one another. To remain faithful to one another and to attend each other's needs. And that is physically, emotionally, spiritually, sexually. That's a bond. It's a covenant. It's a holy agreement. That's another word for covenant. Holy agreement. And then God blesses it in the sacrament. So it's very important. So by any chance, do you know anyone who's married but not by the sacrament? So have you received the sacrament of matrimony? In other words, did you receive the blessing of God through the ministry of the church's priest or deacon? Now, a deacon can witness a marriage. Did you know that? So if you're not having a nuptial, that's what I want to say, a nuptial mass. I was going to say marriage mass, but that's not the right word. It's nuptial mass. If you're having a nuptial ceremony, that means the vows, the rings, the readings, not mass. A deacon can perform that, witness those vows, right? But if you're having a mass, that means the vows and the rings right after the homily. During mass, well, of course, the priest does that. But that's the sacrament, whether it's in a ceremony without a mass or within the mass. So you have marriage. The sacrament of marriage can be done within the context of mass, right after the homily, or the sacrament of matrimony in the context of the readings. And right after the readings, the vows, the rings, and the blessing. We call that a nuptial ceremony. And we call this a nuptial mass. So you can have either one. Now, is there any particular reason why someone would choose a nuptial ceremony, Father, over a nuptial mass? Well, thanks for asking me. Yes. For instance, if this is a mixed religion, maybe one is not Catholic, and they say to themselves, half of our congregation here is non-Catholic. They cannot receive Holy Communion. Father, we're going to opt for the nuptial ceremony. I said, okay. Of course, that is a valid sacrament. You may choose that. Now, I have to tell you, some people who are marrying a non-Catholic, like a Lutheran or a Methodist, still prefer a nuptial mass. And you know what they say to me? Well, Father, most of the people coming to this, they're Catholic. Very few from his side. So we're going to have a mass. I said, okay, you could have a mass. So you could have a mass, or you could have a nuptial ceremony, depending on what the situation is. Now, let's talk about when a nuptial ceremony has to take place. In other words, let's talk about when a couple cannot have a mass. Is there a particular situation that may happen? Yes, there is. And that is when one person is marrying a non-baptized person. So in other words, they're not baptized. They're either Jewish or Muslim, or they have never just been baptized. So in that case, it would be the nuptial ceremony. It will be a valid ceremony, but in the context of the liturgy of the word, exchange of vows, exchange of rings, and a blessing. That would be the case for someone marrying someone who is not baptized. It is a holy and natural bond, right? A holy and natural bond, because that's what marriage is. It's from the Creator. Open the book of Genesis in the first book of the Bible, and you talk about our first parents, right? So that is primarily the natural law, the divine law, coming from God, that those people enter into that union. Now, just to throw in another little topic on this 9th commandment, I want to talk to you about, how about if you marry a Lutheran and a Lutheran get married? Is that a valid union? Yes. How about if an atheist marries an atheist? Is that valid? Yes. Because it's all part of divine law. That's why when people come to me and they say they're on their second marriage because that ended in divorce, I said, but that marriage was valid. So you have to have an annulment first, because that is part of divine law. Even though it was not in the sacrament of matrimony. It's like when the church recognizes the baptism of a Lutheran. Do they use water? Yes, Father. Do they say, I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit? Yes, Father, I was there, they did that. I said, okay, that's valid. We accept that. Oh, absolutely. We accept it, because they use water, and they use the words of the Trinity. The matter and the form of the sacrament. It's a valid sacrament. So you have to, like, don't discard when a Lutheran marries a Lutheran and thinking, oh, they didn't get married in the church, it's not valid. Incorrect. It's valid. It's valid. And so if they divorce and they want to remarry, the Lutheran will have to go and get the annulment, because remember, this is divine law. You may think it's the law of the church. The law of the church is the law of God. I mean, we don't have our own separate laws. That we're in union with God, right? So I just wanted to bring that into play here, because I don't know if you all know that. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know the difference between a nuptial mass, marriage within the context of mass, and a nuptial ceremony, marriage in the context of the liturgy of the word, readings. When do we opt to have this, or when should we have this? So that's why I wanted to explain it to you, especially in light of maybe people who have not had their marriage convalidated. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's just say, my dear friend John. My friend John was born a Catholic, received his baptism, confirmation, Holy Communion, made his first penance, went to Catholic school, and he married this sweetheart of his, who was a Lutheran girl. And they got married in the Lutheran church. Or they got married by a judge. They went on a beach, they dialed 1-800, find a minister. Hello? Can you do this ceremony on the beach? We want to wear flip-flops. Dial 1-800 minister. I'm only kidding you. But I mean, I'm sure there's something like that. That's an invalid marriage. It's an invalid marriage because one of that party was Catholic. And that marriage is constituted as invalid, which basically means that that couple needs to have their marriage convalidated. In other words, made a sacrament. So they should come to the priest and say, Father, I'm a Catholic, my wife is Lutheran. We were not married by a priest in the sacrament of matrimony. We just got married on a beach. But I heard that I can't be a godparent because my marriage is not a sacrament. And I would say, you're right. You can't be a godparent. You have to have your marriage a sacrament. In other words, if you didn't receive confirmation or First Holy Communion, you couldn't be a godparent. You have to be fully initiated, baptism, confirmation, Holy Communion, and your marriage must be a sacrament. So we would like to have our marriage convalidated, made into a sacrament. I said, oh, okay. I said, so why don't you come in the office and we'll talk and I'll prepare you. I'll prepare you for the sacrament, you and your wife. And so we talk and we just discuss things. They attend that pre-Cana seminar and we talk about many things. And then the ceremony will then happen. It's a convalidation. Most of them take place within the context of the nuptial ceremony, because for them this is their second time doing it. For us, in the eyes of God, it's the first time. But for them, it's the second time. And sometimes they just want a ceremony, a small ceremony in church, which is fine. It's about a half hour, 25 minutes, and there you have it. The sacrament is administered. Now, how many people do you need for a sacrament to be valid for marriage? 5 people. The couple, the best man and the maid of honor, which are called witnesses, and the priest or deacon. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you need 5 for the sacrament of matrimony. I tell them, you could have 5 or 5,000. Knock your socks off. but we need 5. 2 of you, me, and your best man and maid of honor. We call them witnesses. Okay? So today's commandment that we're talking about is, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's husband or wife. Strong desire, almost want to steal the husband and wife. Maybe by all the time you're paying attention to them. In common street language, that's called flirting. Have you ever flirted with somebody, you who are adults? You know, have you ever done that? That's entering into this breaking of this commandment, because the covetousness has a lot to do with the flirtation. And so we have to be very careful that we're not in those dangerous waters, right? We have to make sure that hey, even if you're single, doesn't mean like you're like these are just for married people. This is, even if you're single, you should not be strongly desiring someone else's spouse. They're married. And you're like, oh, I wish he was my husband. Sorry, all bets are off. Do you see the ring? All bets are off. So you shouldn't be doing that. You should not be coveting someone else's spouse. That's a strong desire by what you say, by how you dress, by what you do. All of that should be carefully watched by you and guarded. Then don't be in their company. If it's a temptation to you, remove yourself from the scene, okay? So the reason why I went into all of that with you today is because I want to tell you about the sacramentality of marriage. It's a covenant. A covenant is a strong agreement with each other and with God. Absolutely. And we need to have that covenant solidified in the sacrament. So, is your marriage a sacrament? Did you have it witnessed by a priest or a deacon? Good. If you didn't, you need to call St. Mary's and you need to make an appointment to see me, because we have to make sure that both of you have your marriage convalidated or made into a sacrament. In other words, validated. It's invalid, we have to make sure it's valid. So it's a convalidation. And then we perform the ceremony. You could have it done in church, in the context of a mass. You could have it done in church in the context of a ceremony. Okay? And you know, I explained to you the difference between a mass and a ceremony, especially if between mixed religions, mixed Christian religions. You could choose a ceremony. But if it's between a baptized and an unbaptized, it has to be done in the context of a ceremony only, not within the context of the Mass, because the Mass is the unifying understanding of those who follow Christ, even if those are not Catholic, interestingly enough, because Christ is the center there. Christ is the center and calls people to that union. So I just want to, I hope this is not too much. I'm hoping I'm not giving you a 3-credit course in Mariology or the matrimony studies, but I wanted to express my concern if there's anyone out there that needs to have, you know what the street word is? To have your marriage blessed. I don't like to use that word, because you know why? What do I do that and you're done? No, it's not like, it's like when people say, oh, what do you bless the bread and wine? And no, that's why I don't like to use like marriage blessed. It's either a convalidation or Father, we would like our marriage to become a sacrament because we got it done in the context of a judge, or we dial 1-800 find a minister, and they came to the beach, and there we are with our little flip-flops and the seagulls. So we had to we wanted to make sure it's done. Now, of course, in the Catholic tradition, it's always done within the context of the church. In the church building, because the church is more than just a functional place. It reminds us of the heavenly Jerusalem, right? So that's very important. Father, what happens when a couple who is Jewish marries a Catholic? Again, a non-baptized marrying a baptized. Well, number one, it has to be what? Right, a nuptial ceremony. A nuptial ceremony. But here's another question. Father, does it have to be in the church building? Because sometimes Jewish people don't like to go into churches. And the answer is, it does not have to be in the church. Not in the church building. Really? That's right. The church says it could be in what is called a neutral place. But it has to be inside. So have I ever performed a wedding between a Catholic and a Jewish person? Yes, I have. Have I ever done that in church? Yes. Have I ever done that in a neutral spot? Yes. Oh, yeah. Where, Father? Well, thank you for asking. I've done it in a catering hall. Really? Well, yes, it's a neutral spot. And it's between a Catholic and a not-Catholic, a nuptial ceremony. And so we set up a little table, and the Catholic girl wanted the statue of the Blessed Mother to come over. So I took it from the school, one of those Blessed Mother statues, put her in my car. I said, come on, Mary, we have to go. We have to go to this place. We have to perform this marriage between this couple. And then we put up, because she wanted to give a flower to Mary. So we did all of that. It was very lovely and beautiful. Very, very nice. So just wanted to give you some of these situations so you could think about it. But I just wanted to ask you, is your marriage a sacrament? Have you had your marriage witnessed by a priest or a deacon? And if you didn't, the only way that it would be valid if you got a dispensation. And if you did, fine. But if you didn't, you have to have your marriage convalidated. Okay? How about that for a little class today? That was a lot on a Sunday. Well, I'm going to give a shout out. I have a couple shout outs today. The first shout out I mentioned at Mass this morning. Joe and Mary Ann Peterlin. Yay! 25 years this month in holy matrimony. So I wanted to put a shout out to them. God bless you, Joe. God bless you, Mary Ann. We love you. We thank you for your kindness and all the work that you do here at St. Mary, and just by your faithfulness to God and to the church. And of course, by living out your sacrament, by living out the sacrament of matrimony. Joe and Mary Ann, may the Lord continue to bless you both with many more years together. Congratulations. Another shout out I have today is Paul Brady from Aaron Construction. You know Mr. Brady. Mr. Brady is very kind to us when he plastered our church. Remember we had cinder block walls? Do you remember those days? Remember on the altar we had cinder block wall? Remember all around the church we had cinder block walls with like the dirty water streaming down? Do you remember those days? Well, Mr. Brady and his crew took care of that for us. Thank you for plastering. But thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul, for everything that you've done for us. You're so kind to us. You are. So thank you, Paul. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Paul. Happy birthday to you. May our Blessed Lady watch over you. God love you, Paul. We love you very much. Also, another shout out to Joe Malicki, who has really painted our church and his crew. Joe has done much for us in the area of painting. Joe painted our school, and I know in the time that I've been here, I've been here 7 years. And Joe has done a lot of stuff for us, and I know he's painted our school, and he's done a fabulous job with that. But after Mr. Brady and his crew finished plastering, Joe painted. Isn't that nice? Don't you love our church? But don't you love our people? I love both and, not either or. Don't you love the people? I love the people. They're so kind to us. Joe, the church looks beautiful. Thank you for taking care of it and, you know, just making it beautiful. Don't you agree, everybody? Don't you think that our church looks beautiful? Now wait until the next phase. I think the next thing we're going to do, everybody, is the floor. Yep, the floor. I just need a couple more pennies before I do that, though, because we're not there yet. Sorry. So if you want to make a couple donations to get us over the top, that would be wonderful, because that's the next thing that we have to do is the flooring. So what we're going to do is rip up the rugs, and then do the whole church, and then the vestibules, then the sacristy, and then the little baptismal area. We're going to hold off for the bathroom because we want to do that all over. That means we're going to put tile floor, tile wall, new fixtures, you know, sink, toilet, all that stuff. Handicap bars, the whole 9 yards. So I'm not doing that next. The floor of the church will be next, okay? But we need a couple more pennies. So I'm just giving a shout out for anyone who's generous with that. And thank you for your past donations. I really appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. So thank you a million times. My next shout out is, so we had 5 trees that came down, right? And that was a lot. That was a lot in the parish area. And it cost, unfortunately, a lot of money to have them removed. However, we have pine, and I know that pine is not, I know now, that pine is not for the fireplace indoors. I know that. Sorry, you're talking to a city kid, so you have to forgive me. Remember, I didn't grow up, when I grew up, we had no fireplace. I asked my mother, how does Santa Claus come? We have no chimney. Like, I was like, what is this chimney? I don't know anything about this stuff. Well, I grew up on a row home, on a block. So forgive me. So we do have pine. But I heard from Susan Rosowitz that the pine could be used for outdoor fireplaces. I said, oh, really? I said, okay. She said, so you were not 100% inaccurate. So thank you, Susan, for saying that to me. That was kind of you. She's so sweet. So we do have pine. Okay, now let's get to the other type of wood. We have oak. We do have oak. That big tree that fell by the pond, oak. We have that for indoor fireplaces. So do me a favor tomorrow, Monday morning, call St. Mary, dial St. Mary, and what's our number? 610-287-8156. I'm reading it off my screen. This is not a teleprompter, believe it or not. I'm just reading it off there. 610-287-8156. Call us and ask for Mary Beth O'Connor and say, Mary Beth, I heard that you have pine and oak. And Father said that if we call you, we could take it and just give a donation. That is correct. So when can I come and where do you have it stored? She'll tell you all that. Okay? So I'm grateful to all of you for your kindness and your love and your generosity to make our parish what it is today. And of course, the most important part of a parish is the living stones, the people, the baptized community, which serve us so very well as we serve each other and all who come our way. May God continue to bless you today and every day. So enjoy this 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and may God bless you always.